Hi guys, my name is Sean Endres. I go by Scout when I'm not at work. I am an FTM-identified therapist, and I'm hoping to get on the air on a regular basis to share some of my ideas about my own transition and experience as a trans person, and also about general areas of concern based on the interactions that I've had with people in my private practice. So instead of doing a bio or resume or that kind of thing to show my worthiness for this endeavor, I thought that I would go through week by week and try to play catch up by briefly um, sharing some of my perspectives and trying to catch up with the rest of the group. So here we go. Week 1. Intros and sexy guys. Ta-da! I'm introducing myself as a sexy guy. Hi. Week 2. Coming out and advice. If I had advice for people about coming out, it would be to look within yourself and figure out, what is my intention in coming out? What do I need out of this interaction? And how is the most authentic way that I can communicate my experience of being trans to someone in a way that they can understand? And coming out is something that happens at different points in our lives. In fact, it's not just something that happens once. And most of the time when we talk about coming out, we think of it as coming out to our friends and loved ones and getting that initial piece of validation. And for me, those were positive experiences. The loved ones in my life, while they went through their own sense of grief and loss, were for the most part supportive. So I feel really grateful for that. I came out during my first year as an undergrad student at SUNY New Paltz, and it was right after I won the drag ball, and it was really exciting. I remember having this rainbow-studded cap that I still have to this day. So, number 3, religion and tattoos. For me, I really had to reclaim a connection to the universe and a connection to spirit due to my negative experiences with different religions over time. And for me, one of the ways that I marked that on my body is through a tattoo, and I actually have a Japanese symbol for truth on my chest. And the other really meaningful thing for me about that is that my tattoo is one of the only things that is constant in my life throughout all the different body changes, throughout all the different people that have come in and out of my lives, all the different interests and things that I do. That tattoo is there, and it will always be there. And for me, it was a real rite of passage. And so when I look at it, it reminds me of the journey that I've taken so far, and also what is to come. Number 4, tea or not? Well, it seems like we know what side of the answer I wound up on. But I would like to say that for me, taking tea was not about wanting to be a man. I never felt trapped in the wrong body. I just knew that I couldn't imagine a future for myself as female. And so when I transitioned, I felt that this was a way that I could come to peace with my body. And who knows? If I had been in a different college, or if I had known different people, say for example, empowered genderqueer female assigned people, that maybe my path would have been different. Internally, I experienced myself as genderqueer and being beyond the binary, although certainly my appearance now is similar to that of a cisgendered male. And so it takes a lot for me to accept that and to think about that. A long time I thought I was going to be able to hold on to that boyish androgynous look. I identified as a boy for a while, and then at some point, looking in the mirror and seeing how other people viewed me as a man, I wanted to figure out how to take that kind of responsibility and to reclaim and to redefine manhood for myself. And that was a really profound experience for me, to create a kind of masculinity that moves beyond patriarchy, that can be open-hearted, that can express emotion, and that can interact with other men in authentic ways. Week 5, masculine and feminine behaviors. I believe that society puts labels on behaviors in order to try to fit them into a box of masculine and feminine. I think that our actions are simply our actions, but that they indicate a particular gender to people in the world. For me, I see 4 separate continuums: gender, gender identity, sex, and sexual orientation. And so gender expression, meaning like the outward manifestations and behaviors that society characterizes as masculine and feminine, is just one piece of this continuum, whereas one's internal sense of gender identity is another continuum. And as we all know, there are many labels and names that we use to try to situate ourselves on that continuum, to find a sense of place, to find a sense of home within ourselves. The other continuum would be sex, meaning biology, the secondary sex characteristics, genetics, genital configuration, and so different trans people, depending on their use of hormones and body modifications, wind up at different points on that spectrum too. And then, of course, sexual orientation. Who are we attracted to? In the absence of a binary gender system, it kind of collapses the ideas about gay and straight and bi even, because how can there be bi if there are more than two genders? And interestingly for me, and also for a lot of the people that I work with, once people become at home and at peace with their bodies, it really opens up the possibility of connecting with people of all sorts of different bodies. My primary identification prior to transition was a lesbian, or I like to call myself a dyke. And then throughout my transition, I lost that sense of connection to other lesbians, that kind of shared knowing glance that I would get on the subway or other different places. And for a while, I felt very invisible because I was partnered with a woman at that point, and people perceived me as straight for the most part. That relationship ended in part due to me wanting to explore my attraction with men. And so now actually I have a long-term partner who is male, and I identify as a gay male. What number are we up to? Insecurities and body dysphoria. This is a perfect segue. I think that our experiences of how our bodies look is often different than other people's experiences of our bodies. And the important thing for me is little by little coming to a sense of confidence and comfort with myself, regardless of what other people think of me and my body. Just like cisgendered people in our society, there's a lot of pressure to conform, to look a certain way, to have a perfect body. And while the different body modifications and changes that trans people use to come to a sense of comfort are certainly relieving, at some point in transition, I think a lot of people realize, okay, I've had hormones, I've had surgery, I'm starting to feel more confident, but there's still something that still lurks me. And so these sensitivities and these experiences wind up having to be worked through. For me, there are times when I get a haircut and I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh my god, I look like a lesbian, which is not the case. Similarly, I might see my hips in a certain way, like, oh my god, people are totally going to be able to tell that I'm trans, or oh my god, these hips, and what it comes down to is that it's something that is more important to me in my head than to other people. Um, and that speaks to the extent that we tend to be our own worst enemies. And that in my work with people and also in my own self-care, the most important thing is to develop a sense of kindness and compassion towards ourselves. Um, Growing up as trans, we face obstacles at every single developmental milestone. And so a lot of the quote unquote symptoms and emotional stressors that people experience being trans comes out of a sense of trauma, of being told over and over and over again, you're not right, you're a freak, there's something wrong with you, and just that sense of being different and not fitting in. And the knowledge that trans people are a target for harassment and violence in our society, and that no one is perfectly safe from that. And there's a kind of symbolic violence and threat that goes along with that that makes it really difficult to move through the world. And I'll talk a little bit later about that as well. Talents and passions. When I was outwardly female, I was a successful bowler. I know it's totally random, but I had a couple of 300s. My first one when I was 13 and then another one when I was 16. I was also a trombonist, and I was a lead chair in the All-American High School Jazz Ensemble, and we played at the Grammy nominee party, and we got to go to the Grammys 2 years in a row rather. And the reason that for me it's important to bring these things up